Welcome back to Another Thing. I'm Larry Menti. The 2016 presidential race has been unique in several aspects, but maybe at the top of the list is the rise in power, you might say, and we'll see if it lasts, of people who are non-politicians or outside the mainstream. And this is on both sides of the political aisle, most notably with Republicans. Let's talk more about that with Tim Tracey, who is a research associate with Monmouth University's Polling Institute. Thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
And so you've noticed this, I know. I mean, everybody's been talking about it. Non-politicians, what is the reason for it? Let's start on the Republican side. In your most recent poll, where have you had the non-politicians?
Well, in our most recent national polling, we had Trump polling in the, in the pole position with Ben Carson, not too far behind him. A lot of it has to do.
And Carly Fiorina third?
And she wasn't in third. She was, more in the middle of the pack. But that has started to change, especially after what political observers say was her strong performance in the latest Republican presidential debate. So,
and let's just point out that in some other polls that have come out in the last couple of weeks, especially since the last debate, she's come up to second or third.
She has increased her standing amongst in these Republican nomination polls. So, for instance, Bloomberg put out a poll this past week which showed her in fourth place. Quinnipiac put out a poll this week also that had her in third, and then Fox News also just released a poll in the past 1 or 2 days that showed her tied in third place with Florida Senator Marco Rubio, behind businessman Donald Trump and the retired neurosurgeon Ben Carson.
Right, and the important part of that for our conversation is that you've got 15 candidates, and the top 3 are never held political office.
It is. It's very interesting. So if you look at, for instance, the latest Fox News poll, if you combine the 3, Donald Trump, Ben Carson, and Carly Fiorina, they take actually a majority of the vote among Republican, primary voters, which really is interesting. And I think a lot of it has to do with Republican voters, I guess, dissatisfaction with their party leadership. So in our latest national survey and some of the surveys that we've done in South Carolina, Iowa, and New Hampshire, we asked these Republican voters what kind of candidate they'd rather have as their next president. So that would be, their 2 choices were someone who is, I guess, essentially a Washington insider, or someone who's had no political experience. And in almost all 3 states and nationally, Republican voters prefer by almost a 2-to-1 margin having a candidate or the next president from their party being someone outside of the Washington mainstream, as opposed to someone with government experience or who has experience governing or in politics in general.
I want to quickly comment on the Democratic side too, because Bernie Sanders, I mean, who saw that coming? This guy's an admitted socialist, which doesn't usually play well in this country.
Well, again, he's doing well amongst the Democratic primary voters, so that tends to be a more liberal voting bloc. I don't know how well he would play in the general election. But no, he really has astounded a lot of political observers.
There's a poll the other day that he's up 16 points in New Hampshire.
Yeah, and our last poll that we released last week in New Hampshire among Democrats had him leading Hillary Clinton by 7 points. So I mean, and that's not surprising, being the senator from Vermont. So he's well known. Yeah, no, he has increased his standing in Iowa.
Do people not like Hillary, or do they like him that much?
I think that it has maybe a little bit to do with both. Hillary, as I'm sure you know, has been dealing with a controversy, especially with the email, and it seems like every day something new is coming out in terms of what they're finding in her, in these emails from her private server. But her favorability ratings among all voters have taken a tumble in several polls. And Democrats, she's still polling strong in terms of her favorability numbers. Somewhere in the 70 favorable to in the teens for her unfavorable rating. So she is having a problem in terms of her favorability rating amongst all voters. So I think some of these controversies, especially the email controversy, has maybe made some voters nervous, and that's maybe why they're kind of flocking to, or I shouldn't say flocking, or turning to Bernie Sanders.
And we'll wait to see if Joe Biden gets in. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's always great to talk to you. The idea of Bernie Sanders running against Donald Trump, a capitalist versus a socialist, would be the clearest choice we ever had in history.
I think that would be that's a fair statement.
It'd be a lot of fun too. Tim Tracey, research associate at Monmouth University's Polling Institute. When we come back, Dawn tells us about a children's book that helps kids deal with the obstacles of life.